Today is All Saints Sunday. It's a day to remember those in the faith who have inspired us, journeyed with us, taught us. It's a good day to hope. Hope in resurrection and reunion. Hope that broken hearts can mend. Hope loved ones will be remembered. And hope to be inspired by the saints of the past to live better in the future. The passage read today is Paul writing to Timothy, Paul's mentee in the faith. You probably noticed all the names, didn't envy Marie for having to read all of them. But did you notice the hope that Paul holds? He is just so confident. Paul's hope is steadfast. We said a few weeks ago that hope requires courage. We see in the apostle what courageous hope looks like. It's hard to have steadfast hope these days. There is so much that can erode our hope in each other, in government, in schools, maybe even church. Of course, Paul had reasons to be hopeless. You can hear them in the text. He's lonely. Do your best to come before winter, he writes. And bring my cloak. It's cold in this prison cell and winter is coming. If they don't kill me first, I might freeze to death. Bring my cloak and bring my books and parchments. The books are probably the books of the Hebrew scriptures, what we call the Old Testament of the Bible. The parchments were probably early writings of the church, maybe even some of Paul's own letters or letters written back to him from the ones that he sent. He yearns to be reminded of hope in the stories of his ancestors, Abraham, Jacob, Moses, Deborah, Ruth, and more. Do your best to come before winter. You can hear the loneliness in his pen, and yet there's hope. Hope that is defined by God. Hope that brings blessed assurance and peace. So how does Paul maintain such hope? I think Paul's hope comes from looking in the rearview mirror. Paul's hope is tied to his memory. Now, he's not naive. There's a lot of pain in his past. There's Alexander and Demas and a host of others who abandoned him when he needed them most. But Paul also makes a list of people in his life who have been the church to him, who have loved him, helped him, been nice to him, inspired him, taught him about God. He makes a list of those who have shown him what it means to be a follower of Christ. He writes, Luke is with me. Luke is not ashamed of my imprisonment. Luke is courageous. He gives me strength. And Timothy, bring Mark with you when you come. Now, this is an important moment. You see, Paul and Mark had a bit of a falling out. They didn't like each other anymore. Once upon a time, Paul had thought Mark couldn't be trusted. Paul wanted nothing to do with Mark, but somewhere off stage to us, there was a reconciliation. And now Paul was wanting a visit from Mark. Can you imagine a reconciliation of people who don't trust each other, who turn out to be enemies? Somewhere, somehow, we don't know how it happens, there's a reconciliation. How I long for that in our world. I think we all could use the hope of reconciliation between family, neighbors, political adversaries, nations. Reconciliation, where somebody says, I want that person to come and be with me. Paul writes, greet Prisca and Aquila. They had been missionaries with Paul. They had traveled supporting the work of the church. Give them my best, Paul says. I'm so grateful for them. And then there's a list of names we know almost nothing about. Eubulus, Linus, he had a blanket, that's about it we know. Pudens, Claudia. We don't know anything about them except that in this moment, when the time of his departure has come, he is remembering them. Today is a good day for remembering. Paul was creating a list. He's looking back over his life and thinking of all the people who inspired him, loved him, walked the journey of faith with him. He's making a list. And because he remembers these people, his hope is strong. His hope for tomorrow is rooted in the love of his yesterdays. When he needs strength for the next day, he looks back at all the people in his life who gave him hope, who encouraged him, who taught him, who were kind to him, who cared for him. He writes, "The time of my departure has come, but I am not afraid, and there is a crown of righteousness for me. I know that in the end there is only God, and God will claim me, heal me, raise me up. I'm not fearing anyone. I'm not despairing. From now on, there is reserved for me a crown of righteousness." You see, when Paul looks back over his life, he pays attention to the signs of God's fingerprints he sees in others, and he keeps a list. There's Luke and Mark and Linus and the household of Onesiphorus. Because he remembers them, he has hope that cannot be shaken. So I ask you, who would be on your list? Maybe some of the names are names we'll remember and light a candle for today. Maybe there are others, many others in these days of division and fear, disasters, pandemics, who remind you of hope, of what it means to love your neighbor, to follow Christ, to love and live the truth, to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. Let me invite you to do something this week. Make a list. Find yourself an index card if people still have those, or use the little note function on your cell phone and write down the names of those who have loved you, who have taught you what it means to follow Christ, who have helped you and cared for you, who fill you with hope that we can be a loving and loved people together, and carry that list with you. I think such memory is the soil on which courageous hope grows. And once you have filled out that card, that list, try filling out another card. If you haven't done so already, fill out a pledge or an estimate of giving card. We'll dedicate our pledges next week to the work of God through this church. You may not think about this, but when you support the work of Derry, you're putting your name on someone else's list. They may not even know you, but you're there. You are inspiring others, loving others, showing others what living defined by hope looks like. You are investing in hope, and our world is desperate for hope. And Derry, you are the most hopeful community I know. You love children a world away in Pakistan and right here in Hershey and Harrisburg. You've helped build classrooms in a school and a dental clinic at a church and provide air conditioning to a shelter, and that's just this year so far. You've made meals for the homeless and for friends who are sick and mourning. You find ways to help love and support one another day after day. We are living our hope, which is why even in the midst of a pandemic and economic uncertainty, we're working on building a new wing of a school half a world away in Pakistan. Just in a month, we've been able to raise through private donors and funds at church over $250,000 of a $475,000 goal to build a school over there. In a month, in a pandemic. Because we have hope. We've welcomed new members, even though we can't always worship together. We've brought on 2 amazing new staff persons to help us in our mission, proclaim God's word, share God's love, and practice God's justice. I could go on. These are hard days in many ways, and it's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to lose hope. So this week, I invite you to find a card and make your list. Remember what God has done for you through the saints. And then I invite you to fill out your pledge or estimate of giving card online or mail one back to the church. Because now is the time to invest in hope. Because the world needs hope. And Derry is the most hopeful place I know. So let's gather around this table of hope once more and remember the life of Jesus. The lives of those whose lights we remember today, and proclaim the hope that love is stronger than death and that nothing can separate us from the love of God.